Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Big Game Indicating Dogs Q&As. You guys know how these work. These are questions from people in the Big Game Indicating Dogs inner circle that are following the Deer Dog Training Blueprint. If you want to find out more about the Deer Dog Training Blueprint, you can go to biggameindicatingdogs.com, and you can also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, all under Big Game Indicating Dogs. So our first question isn't really a question, it's more of a comment, and it's from Tom. And Tom asked the question last time whether his pup was doing a lot of barking or whining in the kennel. And this is a good one for kenneling or crate training or anything like that. Basically trying to fix separation anxiety. Tom is living in town, and his pup was barking and whining a lot in the kennel. It was taking quite a while to settle down, and obviously with neighbours in town and things, it wasn't good. So Tom basically came up with the idea himself to, instead of just putting the pup in the kennel and walking away, which is what we recommend in the blueprint, and that does work well. There's a lot of different steps to that, and make sure you get the pup tired before putting it in there and doing that. Get it tired and relaxed, fed, watered, comfortable, and then just walk away. Tom started sitting, he'd put the pup in the kennel, turn around, walk away, but only go about 10 meters away. And then he was sitting down, facing away from the pup and just completely ignoring the pup. Not turning around, not saying anything to the pup once it was quiet, but just putting the pup in this kennel, walking away 10 meters and sitting down, facing the other way, completely ignoring it. And he said his pup went from taking 10 minutes to quieten down, so it was barking and whining for 10 minutes, down to like 1 minute when he was sitting there. And once the pup was quiet, he'd just quietly and carefully get up and walk away, and the pup would stay quiet. And he said, and his question was, is there any problem with doing this? Should I be doing it because it's not in the blueprint? And I said, I don't see any problem with that. And the key to it, and Tom was on to it right from the start, is that he completely ignored the pup. He didn't say anything while it was whining. He wasn't trying to reassure it while it was whining, because reassuring a pup or a dog while it's barking or whining or unsure can be taken by the pup or dog as you're sort of reaffirming the fact that it should be worried or scared or barking or crying, you know. So it's very important to either just only put pressure on it or completely ignore it altogether. And also, in that situation, I wouldn't want to say anything before I walk away. Just walk away. But it's a good little trick, and it's just one more stepping stone. It's getting those rungs in the ladder closer. Lots of little steps in training is good. And I think that was a good little trick. So yeah. So Tom had just basically said here that just wanted to say thanks for covering my last question in the Q&A, and just an update with the sitting outside. It was only about a week from my comment, and she started settling down before I even had a chance to sit down, and since then she's been brilliant. I never hear a peep out of her, so that's awesome. Good stuff. Our next question is Brian. Now, Brian's saying, I can only train my pup in a small area because my vet said I can't train off the section until after the third round of vaccinations. So this is something that we've had before. Generally here in New Zealand, and this can be different in different areas and with different vets. And sometimes vets in certain different areas will have different time frames and different amounts of rounds of vaccinations and different things, because there's been a bit of an outbreak of a different, illness or something that your pup can get. It'll be parvo or something like that. It might be really bad in the area, so they're taking extra precautions. What I say on this is always just listen to your vet. But we have had this come up a bit more often in New Zealand recently, where the vets, it's usually 2 rounds of parvo. And that works out if you get your pup at 8 weeks and gets its first shots as early as possible. If you get a pup at 8 weeks, it's probably just had one lot of shots, and you need to wait 4 weeks until it gets its final vaccination. I think might have to wait a week after that until that final vaccination's properly ready. Like they want it to take another week, and then you can take it off the section. So in the blueprint, we do the first 4 weeks of training at home, and then when you get that final shot, then we start going out into different areas. But a few people have had the situation where they've got to wait another 4 weeks after that, and they're trying to follow the blueprint. And in the blueprint, at the start of part 2, if everything's right on track, which it doesn't have to be, you can move faster through the blueprint, you can move a lot slower through the blueprint, and things like this are a good example. Some people are in that situation that at the end of part 1 and the start of part 2, when I start taking print off the section, that they're in a situation where their vet said, no, you don't take your pup or dog off the section or into other areas where other dogs might have been for another 4 weeks. So people are feeling a bit stuck there. In the past, my answer to that has been, just don't worry about it. Just basically do as much as you can just around the section or in whatever space you have available. And 4 weeks isn't much, and we move through the things in the blueprint pretty quickly. So Brian's just asked, I can only train my pup in a small area because my vet said I can't train off the section until after the 3rd round of vaccinations, and he's having trouble getting his pup to walk in front. He wants to hang around behind me and not walk in front. Do you have any tips other than what's in the blueprint? I've shortened that question up a bit. I've rewrote it because it was quite long and a bit all over the place. But hey, Brian did say that he had a paddock to work in too. I don't know how big that paddock is, Brian, but if you've got a decent sized paddock to work in that other dogs aren't going into, so you can take your pup there at the moment, I don't have many other tips other than what's in the blueprint, which most of part 2 is all about how to get your pup walking in front, which is where we want a big game indicating dog working. And in the blueprint, we do all our out front work first, which works really, really well. It's a massive change I made to my training system a long time ago now, years and years ago. And when I made that switch to just start them off out in front, heel is very easy to get later, particularly if you've followed a good training system, you haven't made loads of mistakes, and you've done everything right. It's a good rock solid heel is relatively easy to get. Having a dog that walks nice and clean line out in front, slow and close, is under good control out in front, is difficult. So, and training a heel and out in front at the same time screws it up. So, so much of the blueprint is about getting that nice, clean, tidy, under control lead of the dog walking out in front. And that all starts in part 2. And there's loads, and most of part 2 is about that. We basically hold the pup back. If things are roughly on track, and again, if you're 2 weeks in front, 2 weeks behind, 3 or 4 weeks in front, 3 or 4 weeks behind, it doesn't really matter. As long as you're not rushing things through and putting more pressure on your pup or dog than you need to, it doesn't really matter. But in the beginning of part 2, a big part of getting the pup to walk out in front is getting out into a bigger area. If you're in a small area, like I was with Print in my section, I had quite a big section actually, and I could walk in big circles around the house, and sometimes Print would sort of click on where I was going and take the lead a little bit. But it was really once we get out into a bigger, more interesting area and the dog actually has room to explore that they start getting in. It's also as the pup gets a bit more age on them too. They start to get more confident and more curious as to what's out and around them and ahead of them, and they'll start to want to naturally lead. And then the beginnings of setting up range is basically just holding that back. So some of the first fundamentals of setting a pup up to walk out in front is going out into a bigger area, covering more ground, and then walking the same route around that area. That's a big one too. If you're always walking in different directions in different places, and you're sort of deciding where to go the whole time, and it changes every time, the pup doesn't really know where to walk, where to go, so it can lead. But if you walk the same route around the same area every time, like with Print in the Blueprint, I'd go out the front gate, had a little side gate there, and I'd go up the grass strip on the side of the road, through the same place in the fence, into a paddock, go straight across the paddock, down the hill, across to it, around this track, across to another gate, right around the back. When I put the long line on and walk over to that gate, Print learnt pretty quick exactly where we were going. I'd open the gate and he'd walk out and start walking off down the side of the road, towards the next gap in the fence. They learn where you're going, so they start leading. So if you can get that going, Brian, where you are, that's what I would try and do. And all of the other stuff that's in part 2 of the blueprint, I would watch ahead too. If you're working on part 2, watch part 3 and 4 so you can see where we're going. But those are the main fundamentals of it. Bigger area, so the pup wants to start leading and exploring, and then walk the same route around the same area. If you haven't got enough room to do that properly, and the vet has said you need another round of shots, I wouldn't stress about it. Whether you're starting that stuff at 12 weeks old or 16 weeks old, it's honestly not a huge deal, man. I know it can be a bit of a pain. Some pups are wanting to go. Some pups that are a bit more forward and confident are wanting to do more. That can make it difficult too. It could be loads of different things. It could be that your pup isn't confident enough, so it's not wanting to lead. Or it could be that your pup is so forward and confident that it's looking at this little area that you're working in and it's getting bored, so it's looking back to you more, because it's finding you more interesting than this boring little area. And so it could be lots of different things. And it can be a pain, because then it feels like training isn't as constructive because your dog's not doing the right thing. Or it might even be, that's when things like the pup getting a little bit frustrated and wanting to paw at you or bite at you or not listen to drills properly can happen too. And that's why in part 1 of the blueprint, we don't go for rock solid compliance. We're just trying to spend time with our pup, link actions with commands, create some of those patterns, keep it as calm and as constructive as possible. And we're really just biding our time until we can get out into those bigger areas and start that stuff that's in part 2. So that's the main thing, man. I just wouldn't overthink it. I wouldn't stress out about it. I'd just try to keep everything chill and constructive. Really watch that stuff in part 1, 2, 3, 4 type of thing. Have a look at how chill I'm keeping things in part 1. Have a look at those fundamentals of getting a pup walking in front that are in part 2. Watch ahead a little bit to get sort of more perspective on where you're going, and you'll be sweet as. Let's have a quick drink. Elliot. I've rewritten this too. This was pretty long. It was good though, like plenty of details. And it's an interesting subject, this. So Elliot has basically asked, my heading dog, Labrador Cross, isn't as naturally calm as Print. It wasn't the most confident pup, but it definitely wasn't the most quiet one, and I'm seeing it come through in training and day-to-day life. What are the challenges of training a more forward and confident pup? And do you think you can get the same result as with a calmer dog? Elliot's gone on to say, on a side note, sometimes my pup will show lots of eye on other dogs when we're out walking. He will crouch down and sneak and point and get very intense. He did ask, is this a sign of strong eye, weak pull? And yeah, it is. That's exactly it, man. He's saying, sometimes I have to give my go command to get him moving again when he's doing this whole stalk and point and crouch thing on other dogs. Sometimes when I see things like this, I wonder if this is a good thing and I've actually got a dog that has loads of potential. I would say, and Elliot did mention that his dog was bred by Julian Payne from his Labrador Sikh, and Sikh is a really good, nice little dog, but Julian did say that she's got a lot of drive on the retrieves. Like she'll just run retrieves all day. Some dogs you throw a few and they get sick of it, the repetitive thing, but he said Sikh is very hot, will just keep going and going and going. I'm not sure who these pups' dad was. I don't know if it was Julian's older heading dog or another dog there, but so basically, the more forward, confident, full-on pup versus Print, who was very calm, and I chose that dog that was sitting back, and Print really was, did turn out to be one out of the box. But I was actually thinking about this after reading this question and thinking about how I was going to answer it, and you see how calm Print is in training. He's like that in day-to-day life too. Very calm, very chill, very easy to train, easy to handle in the bush. But he's pretty plain-eyed on the deer, and he will sneak and point and all of that, but not as much as other dogs that I've had. Because then Elliot goes on to say about how this dog's showing lots of sneak and point, strong eye, weak pull characteristics. I think we talked about strong eye and weak. Was it the last one or the one before?
A little bit of both, but the one before.
Yeah, the Q&A, not the one before this, but the one before that. I went in depth on that, if you're wondering what I'm talking about there. It's basically just a dog with strong eye and a strong point, strong sneak and point. But as far as, can you get the same result as with a calmer dog? This is what I mean about this being an interesting subject. So you could have a dog like Print that is very calm and cruisy and easy, and that can equate to a dog that's super, super effective in the bush as a hunter. Fly was a bit like that, and that super calm around the house, super easy to train, super smart. But then she also had that real strong eye and sneak, and she was just out the gate good at hunting and stalking and pointing and all of that as well. Print's calm and easy, but he doesn't have that same intensity, and basically, for lack of a better word, he doesn't have that same talent in the bush on as far as the sneak and the point goes. He's very, very good, and I've actually been putting him in. He's got a lot of drive. He hunts like mad. Like, as far as a dog that as soon as you get into the bush, he's just all about finding a deer, and whatever is the freshest, like scent, and it might not be fresh. It might be a deer that's walked through last night. He'll hunt that as full on as a real fresh mark or a direct wind. It doesn't matter. He's just going for it. Heaps of drive, really, really keen, doesn't give up, will just hunt all day, and he's very, very effective at finding deer. He's very good at reading a scent and reading the wind and pinpointing the animal off the wind too. And he's got so good at it so quickly, but then he doesn't have that same, that really good sneak in and point. So I've actually been, he lets me know and pinpoints the animal from quite far out, and I've been putting him in at heel. And that's been in a couple of my, in some YouTube videos, both on Big Game Indicating Dogs YouTube channel and Paul John Michael's YouTube channel, where Prince indicating, winding, taking me in, and he starts steering right in the direction of the animal, and I'm reading him and reading the whole situation, and I know this animal's right here in front of us. It's just over the brow or something. So I put Print in behind. Whereas Fly, I would leave her out front, and she'd just ninja right in and just lock up. Then, Elliot, you asked in your original question about Miko, how she was the most forward and confident one of the litter. The guy that bred that litter said that. She said when the pups are running around, she's always the one in front, just leading the pack. And that's come through in all of her training, everything that she does. She's just full on, all over the place. And it's funny, like even when we were, when I was off on that rafting mission the other day, and so we were next to the river, and I'm loading up the raft and blowing it up and mucking around, packing dry bags and tying them on. It took quite a while. And Print and Miko are both there. Print's just sort of cruising around us, just waiting and just looking at us. Miko's frickin' 10 meters over there, locked up, pointing in the bloody willows like there's a stag in there or something. Like it's probably a mouse, you know, like I don't know what. She's just so full on and into everything, and you call her back, turn your back for 2 seconds, look up again, where is she? She's never far away, but she's just always all over the place. Having said all that though, so she's full on, and she's taken more work and more time. Having said that though, the amount of talent that she has is ridiculous. And you were asking about, do you think I could train her to be a big game indicating dog? I'm going to, and I think she's going to be. I basically know she's going to be really, really good. She's going to be a little bit of work, maybe take a little bit longer. She's already got more. You know, she's about 2 now. I trained her with the Palmiko Dog Guide, so she's had no big mistakes made with her. She hasn't chased animals or done it. She's not gun shy. She hasn't had no massive mistakes. Well, she has chased Pukikos a couple of times, so a couple of small mistakes, but not the really big mistakes of screwing up a dog because you've shot over it without doing proper introduction to gunfire, or taking a dog out hunting deer when you don't have proper control over the dog, and you shoot a deer or wound a deer or spook the deer, and the dog just takes off chasing a deer, barking and yapping off through the bush, or sending a dog out after wounded deer, and next thing the dog's chasing the deer down into the creek and it's got it by the throat in the creek, and all that sort of stuff that can be very difficult to undo. Miko's had none of that super crazy stuff. But she hasn't had all of that structured training from the blueprint. I'm going to do some training with her. Basically, I'm going to do what I used to do in the deer dog training boot camps, and we're going to film it too, and make sort of and we're going to do a video product with it, so people will be able to buy it and see exactly what I do. Basically, what I used to do in the deer dog training boot camps, so people can put their older dogs that haven't had loads of massive mistakes with them through a quick training course, a few weeks, and basically start hunting. Not as good as the blueprint, but a pretty handy thing to have out there for a lot of people as well. And with Miko, I know it's going to work very, very well. It's been a completely different path getting there. She's 2 years old now. I followed all this other training. It's obviously taken a lot longer. She's over 2 years old. I'll pretty much definitely be hunting her on the long line. She won't be quite as clean and tidy and as perfect as what Print was when I started off hunting, but I think in the end should be really, really good. And as far as taking a dog like Miko, really full on, forward and confident, and if I had started her off as a pup in the blueprint, and trained her with the blueprint all the way through, she'd be great, man. She'd be great. She would have been more work, maybe taken more time, wouldn't have been quite as easy at the start when hunting. But she would have got there and she would be just as good, if not arguably better. And the things that you're telling me about your dog, yeah, it's a bit more full on. It's not the most forward. It's going through training pretty well. I'm seeing it do all the sneaking and pointing and stuff. It sounds really, really good, man. To me, and you know, in the blueprint, I talk about getting that quiet dog because it's just the blueprint's all about giving as many people as possible the best chance possible of having the best dog possible. You know, that's our mission statement with Big Game Indicating Dogs and my dog training and the blueprint and the Palmiko Dog Guide as well, is helping as many people as possible to train the best dogs possible. And if you've got the choice, I think for a Big Game Indicating dog, it is good to try and get that calmer, more standoffish dog and start with that. But those more confident forward dogs can arguably be better. It can just take more work and time. And it can land in so many different ways. Prince very calm, easy to deal with. He hasn't got that same sneak. You might actually get quite a full-on forward confident dog that's a bit of a pain in some situations, but when it gets onto the scent of an animal, it goes real sneaky and intense, and it's very, very good. So it can go, you know, multiple ways. But that's it, guys. Only 3 questions there for today, because we got back to this one a little bit sooner. Thanks to everyone who signed up to the Deer Dog Training Blueprint and the Palmiko Dog Guide lately. Shout out to everyone in the inner circle. And remember, if you want to learn more about Big Game Indicating Dogs and the Deer Dog Training Blueprint, you can go to biggameindicatingdogs.com. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Check out my new hunting videos on Paul John Michaels on YouTube. And I'm also on Instagram as well under Paul John Michaels. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you later.